Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon. I'm Mark, and this is Spoonie Space, a web show by chronically ill people for chronically ill people. That's why we call ourselves Spoonies. My name, again, is Mark. I'm 32 years old. What makes me a Spoonie is I have fibromyalgia, a chronic pain condition. For this topic today, which is service animals, emotional support animals, and pets, I myself have two pets, a cat and a dog. A dog that's very close to an emotional support animal. He's behind me now and never really leaves my side. His name's Casey. He's a Newfoundland Chow mix. And I'd like to go ahead and pass it to Kate and let her introduce herself.
Hey everybody, my name's Kate. I am a 26-year-old Spoonie. What makes me a Spoonie is hydrocephalus and all of the surgeries and surgical complications. I currently don't have a service animal, but I am in the process of applying for a service dog through Paws with a Cause. I'm just waiting right now for the home visit before we find out if my application progresses. Emma, off to you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Emma. I'm 20 years old, and I am a Spoonie because I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. It's a connective tissue disease, and postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. I have two cats I love very much, but I am currently working as a trainer for autism service dogs in Canada. So I'm part of this from the perspective of someone who trains service dogs. I'm going to pass it to Cara.
Hi, I'm Kara. I'm 32 years old, and what makes me a Spoonie is I have an autoimmune disease, sarcoidosis. It's left me blind in my left eye. I've also been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder as well as chronic anxiety disorder. I have an emotional support animal as well as a physical therapy animal. She's a 24-year-old mare. She's a quarter horse, and her name is Athena, and she's my baby. Louise.
Hi, I'm Louise. I'm 23. I have two animals. This is Douglas, who's a Bichon, and I have a Springer Spaniel as well. But they're just pets. I'm a Spoonie because I have fibromyalgia and also lupus, an autoimmune disease. Only recently diagnosed actually, but my job is a professional dog groomer with my own business, so I get to work with animals all day, and so that's why I'm here to give my input on that way as just a normal pet owner. And I will pass on.
Katie, why don't you go ahead and
Hi.
introduce yourself?
Yeah, I am Katie. I am 28 years old. I have fibromyalgia, lupus, and rheumatoid arthritis along with chronic vertigo. And I also am paralyzed in my right leg and have PTSD. My service dog is Kaya. Her and I have been paired up for almost 6 years in November. She is a German Shepherd Husky Border Collie mix, and she will be 7 in November, and she will be retiring in about 2.5 years. And I'll pass it back to Mark.
Thank you, Katie. Now, I'd like to go ahead and share something that was shared on our Facebook page in prep for this show, and that is My Mina Life had said, my emotional support animal is my bird, Koopa, who helps me get up in the morning with a cheer and always there to check on me to brighten my day. He flies right to me when I'm upset or if anything goes wrong. We don't all have birds, but our animals seem to be very empathic. I know my dog myself, if I'm not feeling well, he is glue to me. And his job is to love me to being happy. And I think that, all of our animals really have that empathic connection with us, regardless if they're a pet, service, emotional support, or therapeutic animal. Emma, what do you think on this?
I think there's no doubt about the ability of animals to read our emotions and how we feel. And it also goes both ways. It's been scientifically shown that even like the smell or working with an animal can increase levels of endorphins in your body. So I run a lot of dog therapy events on the campus where I go to school, and it's amazing seeing how students can just look at a dog and say like, oh my gosh, that just made my day. I feel so much better. So I think animals can have a huge impact on both your emotional health and then your physical health, from the perspective that looking after another animal, you focus far less on what you yourself are feeling.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Emma. Does anybody else want to add into that?
I'll say that definitely I completely agree with it. Especially with my own dogs, if I'm not feeling very well, they'll be sat with me or giving me space, so they know which one I'll need. Because even though this one's quite small, sometimes my pain can't manage him sitting on my lap, but he'll just sit beside me and just make sure that I'm okay. But also I agree that you get up, you look after them more than yourself. So it is something that gets you up every single day, makes you go out for a walk, even if you don't feeling too good. You're still getting out into the fresh air, and then obviously caring for something else. I don't know what I'd do if I didn't have my dogs. I think I'd probably stay in bed. So yeah, definitely I agree with everything that was just said.
Katie, go ahead and
I will add that my service dog can tell before I even know that I'm either going to have a flare or be sick. And so she can tell, I'm thinking and guessing based upon the pheromones, and she will hide her pack from me so that I can't go to work that day and I have to call in sick. She's a sneaky little dog, but she definitely alerts me for vertigo based upon how she can read my body, and they are really good with body language and just helping us get moving and going, and also knowing when to stop us from moving when we're pushing ourselves too far.
That is an awesome point. Thank you very much. Now, I want to go ahead and talk a little bit about service animals versus our emotional support and our therapy and our regular pets, because there's a lot of things that get involved with this as far as the process involved is applications, what those animals are allowed to do versus the other ones. And since Kate is in the middle of that process, I'd like to go ahead and have her explain what she's doing so far.
Thanks, Mark. Well, so far, I filled out the pre-application and was selected to fill out the full application, which involved a lot of questions, a portion for my physician to fill out, stating that yes, I would benefit from having a service animal and that I'm not lying about my medical condition. Um, I received confirmation in the mail 3, maybe 4 months ago that my application had been accepted. So I'm just waiting for a home visit sometime in the next 2 years to continue the process from there. Yeah, that's where I am. Kathy, are you there? Do you want to take it from here? Because I know you did some research on this.
Please also introduce yourself. What makes you a Spoonie? Our typical introduction, please, Kathy. Unmute yourself first, Kathy.
All right, there we go. Can you hear me now? Okay. I'm Catherine. I am 54 years old. I have 2 grown children. I'm a Spoonie because I have fibromyalgia and arthritis and a whole slew of other acronyms. And I am a part of Spoonie Space because I love helping people out. As far as my experience with service animals, I've done a lot of research for it because my husband's a diabetic, and I was looking for possibly one for myself as well. Unfortunately, right now, I don't qualify. And I do have an emotional support animal, though, which is my dog, a long-haired dachshund. Her name is Harley. She started off as a rescue. I trained her to be a therapy dog. Unfortunately, I had to retire her shortly thereafter because she went blind. So now she's my emotional support animal at home. I can't take her out to public because she's blind. So she's a glorified pet, if you will. I don't know where the conversation is otherwise, so I will pass this to Mark, and if he wants to catch me up and pass it back, that'd be great. Mark?
Yes, we were talking about the process of getting a service animal, and I think we've covered a lot of that now. I actually want to go ahead and, since we do have someone with a current service animal, Katie, I want to go ahead and have her take over where our other panelists have left off as far as the process and getting the actual service animal, how that is done, the bonding, etc. Please, Katie.
Okay, so I was on a waiting list for my service dog, and it was about 3 years by the end of that waiting list, and a month before my major back surgery when I was finally paired up with my service dog. I had been on the list just waiting for different types. They couldn't tell me which one they were doing because it just depended on how well the dog took on the training. I was the first person to ask for them to train for vertigo alerting. I guess that's really unheard of. So I had them just work on that, and they found a dog that they had tried to previously pair up with someone else, and she refused to work with them. And so they took her back and brought her, and I met her a couple of times before they even dropped her off at my house. They had to make sure she knew what she was doing, make sure that she was willing to help me, because she might have had to be retired right then and there. And as soon as she met me, she just came straight to the side that she needed the help, didn't want to leave. The couple of times I met her, it took a lot to pry her away from me, so we knew that pair up was going to be great. They also made sure that I had a person with me to train, so that if something happened to me, like if I went to the hospital or if I couldn't take her out, the other person could take her out and knew the commands. She cost about $35,000. The people who trained her through the company actually decided to donate her to me because she came 2 years earlier than was expected, because I was told 5 years. And I had been in a wheelchair and I wanted to get out by using her, so she was used to help me relearn to walk and get moving, because I hate wheelchairs with a passion. And they just made sure that we were going to pair up. They checked in a couple of times. Now a lot of facilities request that once a year you go and take the dog to them. They check and make sure it's still working, see if there's anything needing to be tweaked so that you don't have to get a service dog like I did, or a service dog trainer like I did to come and tweak. They now have you do yearly check-ins, and depending on the state that you're at, depends on the process and how long it takes to wait. Since she is going to be retired soon, I could go back on the waiting list and they would hopefully have one before she retires. Or I've opted, they have a dog trainer in Idaho Falls, and we are going to pick a puppy and train it underneath mine because that is the fastest, easiest way to do it. And it's a process taking her into public. You've got to know your ADA laws. She can go everywhere except for where they prepare food, where like the OR or the NICU or ICU, because those have to stay sterilized. They can go into the hospital with you. I just had to show proof that I needed her, so I had a prescription on top of a 9-page doctor's note in order for them to approve her for me. And I actually had a doctor say that I needed her over me actually going to them. So that kind of helped a little bit.
Oh, yes, Kate.
A very good point was just made. Some agencies do charge for service animals. They charge, for everything for the dog, because they put a lot of time and money into the animal to be able to prepare it for the patient or recipient. And a lot of agencies require you to actually travel to them to be paired with the dog, to learn or to train with the dog. The reason I chose to try to apply through Pause with a Cause is they don't charge for the animal. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Awesome. Thank you, Kate. Now, Emma, you're in the process of training a service animal right now. Can you kind of talk a little bit about that?
So obviously the first thing you have to do is get a puppy that has the personality or like that seems like it could be a service dog. So the organization I work for has our own breeding program where we breed service dogs. So all our dogs come from like a family of service dogs. The dog I'm working with at the moment was a donation from another organization that has their own service dog line. So you could say that the service dog traits run in the family. So the dog I have now, I got last week. She's 8 weeks old. She's going to be an autism service dog. So what I do is the socialization and basic training, which is essentially your sit, stay, come, general behavior, being polite in public. As a trainer, we don't actually have the legal right to take the dog everywhere with us the way you would if it was a fully certified service dog. It's a little bit different in my case because the puppy comes from a line of service dogs. So even though she hasn't passed any of her tests, she is licensed as a service dog. And she has her vest and she has certification and forms that say she's a service dog. And then because of that, it's as a courtesy usually extended that you can take your service dog in training anywhere. We go to puppy classes every other week to meet up with the other dogs. It's really good practice to do training when there's other dogs present because a big part of socialization training is teaching your dog to ignore other stimuli. So we're not at that stage yet with the one I'm working with now. We're still working on sit and stay. But once I've had her for, it'll probably be 10 months to 18 months, depending on how well the training goes, she'll then go on to one of our professional trainers who will do anywhere from 2 weeks to 2 months of really intensive program-specific training that's targeted at the needs of the recipient of the dog. And then after that, the dog will be placed. So that's kind of what the process is with the organization I work with. Some organizations like you to travel and go and do like their own sort of boot camp with the dog. It really just depends on the organization you're looking at. Some of the bigger ones that are international like you to travel. The one I work for is just local. So, yeah.
Thank you very much, Emma. Now, I want to go ahead and shift gears a tiny bit here and talk about therapeutic animals. And we have a very unique therapeutic animal here amongst our panelists, and that's our horse. And so I would like Kara to go ahead and tell us a little bit about her story and her bond with her animal.
Yeah, I remember my childhood being a lot of awful, frightening hospital stays. I've always been a Spoonie. I've been a Spoonie since I was about 8 years old. I lost the vision in my left eye. I had a very atypical childhood. It was very, very stressful. It was hard, and my parents did a really, really great job of trying to make it a little less stressful. And I think I might have guilt-tripped my dad a little bit into buying a horse. I think every little girl at some point wants a horse, and I played the Spoonie card on my dad, and I got a horse. And it was amazing, just the way it made my condition easier to deal with. And when I was an adult and I got diagnosed with the post-traumatic stress disorder and the anxiety disorder, it was awful. I didn't want to get out of bed. I didn't want to live. I didn't care that I didn't want to get out of bed and didn't live. I was dead inside. And through a fortuitous series of events, I happened to have found a horse who was a Spoonie herself. She was very skinny. She had been neglected. She had long feet. I mean, she was just a mess. And through getting her, I was able to work through the issues of apathy towards my life. I was able to get out of bed in the morning. I finally went back to college, and I actually went to class, which for me was huge because I spent years where I didn't leave my house very often. At the end, it gave me a sense of purpose. And again, she gave me the confidence in myself that I could get back my former self, that I could be what I considered to be Kara again. And then when I went to school, I figured out that I could actually use a horse and my knowledge of horses to help other people in my position, not only with emotional disturbances or disorders, but physical as well. And the field of equine-assisted mental health therapy it's small. It's quite obscure as of yet. Fortunately, I live in Lexington, Kentucky, the horse capital of the world, and we actually have 2 separate facilities that operate along the same line. Their methods do differ a bit. With equine-assisted therapies, you have your mental health therapy, which does not have to involve riding. In fact, the GALA program, which is an up-and-coming equine assisted mental health therapy organization, does not involve riding. And the center that we have here in Lexington that works with youth doing, the EGALA stuff, they do not ride. And then, of course, we have, your traditional equine therapy where, riding is involved, but you don't have to live in the country. You don't have to own your own horse. It is very much a viable option for individuals who, for whatever reason, may not have success with traditional talk therapy. So it's new, but hopefully it's growing.
Will you also expand a little bit on how your horse has helped with PTSD with your husband?
Sure. Equine community, that for every horsewoman there is a long-suffering broke husband. And I will be honest, my husband is one of those individuals that he just doesn't have any interest in exploring that route of therapy. However, we have a lot of friends, a lot of acquaintances. I certainly have a lot of friends whose husbands do. In fact, there is a program here at the Kentucky Horse Park. I believe once a week a veteran group comes in and does a ride, and that sort of thing. And what we hear from these guys who do participate in it is, you know, again, they don't benefit from your traditional talk therapy. They have nothing to say to therapists, and I know it's something that my husband has said repeatedly, that it's very, very hard for him to participate in traditional talk therapy because he feels like, well, you know, what does this therapist know about what I saw over there? And it's very much a common theme amongst vets is they don't want to talk about it. They're suffering from it and they're having difficulty dealing with it. And, you know, in our military, we have such a culture of strength being the prized attribute of a soldier. Thankfully, we're starting to get into a more aware military, at least here in the United States, about the psychological effects of war as well as the physical effects. But it's still, to do that, it's really hard to get these guys to open up. And for some reason, we've just found that for some individuals, for some veterans, horses actually work for them. They will actually go to the therapy sessions with the horses. They will actually show up where, you know, a lot of times we have veterans that have a very high no-show rate to your traditional therapies. They tend to drop out of it after a fairly short period of time. Seeing is a lot of these vets are sticking with the equine therapy and they're benefiting from it. And it's giving them an opportunity to express how they feel in a way that's not confrontational to them. It's a way that does not make them feel like they're cornered and forced to talk. It's just, again, for people who really are not seeing results with talk therapy. I myself, with my PTSD, I had no success with traditional talk therapy, and it was the same thing. I didn't go to therapy appointments. It didn't work, so why bother? And for me, having the horse more or less brought me from being a total recluse, not ever leaving my house because of my PTSD, to, you know, now I'm out, I'm going to college. I've turned this passion that's helped me into a career. I'm so excited to hopefully help other people like me not go through so many years where they hated their life, to get the help that best suits them as soon as possible. And with every other therapy or any other service animal, to, you know, be able to have that availability if the equine therapy is what would truly serve their best interest. Mark?
Thank you very much. It looks like Dina has gone ahead and joined us. So Dina, please introduce yourself, tell us what makes you a Spoonie, and tell us a little bit about your service animal.
Hi guys, sorry I was late. I'm Dina, and it looks like my marquee is gone today. I am a Spoonie because of a number of things. I syndrome, hypermobile type. Hello, who seems to be smiling, but she's not, because I don't have air conditioning in this apartment. But that will be rectified in 10 days, and she will be smiling a lot less when we have air conditioning. And she will be smiling out of just being happy then. She is a Belgian Malinois, and she is both a mobility and chemical sensitivity service dog for an emotional support animal. She is a service dog. This giant apparatus on her back that I'm going to turn computer so you can see better is what I use so that I don't go boom. I use it. She is not big enough for me to use as a full bore service dog. I don't know if we've talked about weights or anything, but you have to be very careful with the size and weight of your mobility support dog. If not, you're going to hurt your dog, you're going to hurt their spine, and you are not going to have a mobility support dog for very long. And that's not fair to your dog. So Shiloh came to me because somebody was bad, and they thought that because our military uses Belgian Malinois in the military, that they could get themselves a big, mean Malinois, and were horrible to her as a puppy, and then dumped her in the desert. And, well, I rescued her. And she promptly said, "Mom, those chemicals are bad for you," before I would pass out. Chemical training is not something that you can train into a dog. And either they get it or they don't. That's not something that we train dogs. We train how they mark for it once they get it. If you find a dog that recognizes things that you can't be around, then we train how they alert. Because her natural alert tends to terrify some people. Don't know how many of you are aware of Belgian Malinois, but obviously they look a lot like a German Shepherd. She has a big bark. She has a big rib cage, and her natural alert out in the community is a big woof. It's just one, but it's a big woof. In the home, it's a little different. She doesn't like people coming into my house with stuff on that is going to make me sick. She doesn't get that. That's my home, and she's a little more protective and is like, "What are you doing?" Woof, 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 woof. Or if she likes them, yes, I know that. I'm telling them what you do, and I'm telling them what gets you in trouble. Or if she likes them, if she's friends with them, she just gets in the way. She won't let them near me. If she thinks that they've got certain fabric softeners are really bad for me, she will put herself between them and will play bark at them. And we'll just do a lot of it. And that's my cue to go, "Okay, guys, I'm going to stay 3 or 4 feet away from you, and you are welcome to play with the dog. But the dog is telling me that I'm going to stay over here, and she's going to stay over there." But she's pretty, yes, I'm talking all about you. She knows it. she's very alert when she's being talked about. But she just knew. She knows very quickly when somebody has something that can make me pass out. It was amazing early on. Cigarette smoke is something that I'm bad about. And in the open malls that we have in California, people take their little dogs everywhere. It's something that blows my mind, but it's a California thing. And she will just reroute me. There, it's not a big deal. And she will literally, because the full name of these dogs, the other type of Belgian dogs, they're all herding dogs. So I just let her herd me. And she'll just herd me around. And I'm like, "Okay, you are very clearly taking me somewhere else. Obviously, you are very clearly taking me somewhere else for a reason." So I will let her herd me slightly out of the way, because obviously she's taking me slightly out of the way because, oh gee, there's a perfume store 3 doors down I didn't know about. Thank you, Shiloh. And I always have a bag of treats with me, and she gets them. Or, oh look, there's a smoker, here's a treat. I always want to reinforce that behavior so that she doesn't lose it. And the mobility harness, that required more training because it is heavy and she doesn't like it. A lot of people do not like training mobility harnesses out here. In fact, in California, I can't find any in Southern California. She got trained in Arizona. I don't know what the problem is in Southern California. There used to be. but there are trainers in Arizona. It's a lifesaver for me. Stairs are really difficult for me. I spent the last 4 days bedbound because my sciatica and problems in low back got badly triggered, and I couldn't do anything. When it's at that level, she's no help, and I have to pull out my trusty walking stick, and then I use both. But she's still useful when I can do stairs. This thing is great, and she learned really quickly, oh, okay, I get it. You're just using this as balance. And I didn't even have to train her on that. That's because Malinois are brilliant dogs. That's why our military uses them. Because you barely have to teach these dogs, at least this one. I'm sure there's probably a dumb Malinois out there somewhere. Don't listen, Shiloh. You're not it. I'm sure there's probably one somewhere, but I've heard nothing but great things about this breed, and I swear you show this dog how to do something twice and she's got it. And that's how stairs was, because I had been using just a 1-foot leash and carefully trying not to hurt her going upstairs, using her help with balance, and then I got this thing and she was like, oh, cool. Life is good. This helps me not, this doesn't hurt, and I get it. And I got the trainer to help me learn how to use it better, and it's been fantastic. The hardest part to train her in is getting her to go urinate in it, which she really does not like doing. That for me, honestly, has been the hardest thing, is she does not like going potty with this heavy thing on her back. She's like, no, Mom, I don't want to do it. And I hear that across the board, is a lot of them don't, they're like, can I be done working first? They learn. And she's really good at it. Mark, have we talked about the difference between emotional support dogs and service dogs?
We've sort of touched on it a little bit, as far as we've talked about the difference that service are allowed to go places that emotional supports aren't. But if you want to go ahead and clarify a little bit more, if you have regulations or anything like that you know, please do.
Sure. So, yeah, no, they aren't. Emotional support dogs aren't. Okay, since Shiloh's decided it is too hot to sit up, I will move my camera. Service dogs, so if you have a service dog, don't ever let anyone ask you what's wrong with you, because they can't. They can ask you what your dog's trained to do. What service does your dog provide? That is the regulation. That is what a hotel, a restaurateur, someone at the beach, they can ask you if it's a service animal. They can ask you what service the animal provides. That can be a dog. That can be a miniature horse. I'm sure she already mentioned that, because the miniature horses are awesome. But they cannot ask you what your illness is. The ADA is very clear on that. And they can serve for mental illness, but a service animal must provide services. They must do things. My dog, I can tell you, my dog provides mobility support, and my dog provides chemical sensitivity. Most people aren't going to ask beyond that, because it's pretty obvious. She has a great big harness on her. Pretty sure she's making it so I don't fall down. They don't really ask questions more than that. If I say chemical sensitivity, they may ask questions, and I'm like, look, I'm a profound asthmatic, and she's got a dog nose. Our military uses these dogs for bomb detection. She can smell what's going to make me have a profound asthma attack long before I do. And they're like, oh, that's cool. And they leave me alone. They're allowed to do that. That's it. That's a service animal, an animal that provides a service for you. They must have a trained service. And if it is a service animal for somebody with a mental health need, that's possible. It may be someone with panic disorder. It may be someone with PTSD where that animal does something specific to help bring them back. If it is a veteran or a woman who has unfortunately been raped and they're going into a PTSD flashback, that animal may be trained to do very specific behaviors to get them out of it. That would be a service animal. And that would qualify as a service animal to go anywhere, to go on an airplane, to do everything. Specifically to go on an airplane. Emotional support animals don't go on planes. Except as pets. Emotional support animals also help with emotional support, and they do all of that stuff too, but they're not service animals. They don't have to do a specific thing. They provide emotional support in a very different way, and they don't have the same regulations. A restaurant doesn't have to let them in. They can provide emotional support by being there, by being a calming support for that person, and that's an awesome thing for a lot of people with, I worked in mental health. I'm a clinician. And that's an important thing. But what they provide is not as well regulated. It's not as well defined. And a lot of those animals are not as well controlled, not as well behaved. And so they don't have the same, they're not allowed in as many places simply because they don't have the same level of training requirements. Some of them may have the same level of training as a service animal. I'm not saying they don't. Some of them absolutely do. I've seen some that have the absolute same level that came to our clinic. And I'd be like, okay. But that's part of the regulation, because I've also seen some that absolutely didn't, because people said they were emotional support animal and they had very little training, and that animal does something wrong and you have problems with it. And I know that Kara wants to disagree with me, so I'm going to let Kara go.
I'm sorry, do you mind repeating the question real quick? You cut out on me.
It looks like you had your hand up wanting to say something different from what I was saying.
I was trying to fix my earbud, but because y'all cut out on me. But no, I definitely agree with what you're saying. And you do see the discrepancies in between the emotional support animals and your standard service animals. I'll be honest with you, I'm not overly familiar with the procedures regarding emotional support dogs or service dogs. Obviously my frame of reference is more or less strictly equine related. However, I do absolutely agree with you, and that is one of the drawbacks of using a horse in that way, is that it's not going to be the animal that you're going to be able to take on a plane with you, even if it's a miniature horse. It's not going to be the animal that's going to go with somebody who, suffers several panic attacks a day. When we look at horses in terms of being emotional support animals. I try to explain it by saying it's like when you go to a therapist. You know, you go a couple times a week. If you're having a bad week, you might go, you know, a couple more times depending on, you know, what kind of day you're having. And it's more of a way to effectively cope rather than an on-the-spot assistance animal. You're not going to have that with a horse. Even if you're fortunate enough to live out in the country and be able to keep your animal in your backyard, it's just not going to be the animal that you're going to be able to take anywhere with you. So there's, you know, that consideration when it comes to equines as service animals or emotional support animals. They just don't function in that way. But I have seen the discrepancy that you're speaking of, especially around military bases where you have a lot of medically retired servicemen and women, and you'll have the honest to goodness service animals that are doing a specific job and are providing a very specific service. And you know, you will see some of the emotional support animals that are the exact same way. And then you'll see some of the animals that somebody has slapped a orange or yellow harness on and called a service animal or an emotional support animal, and just this, you know, this animal through no fault of its own, likely, is just not an animal that should be used in that way. So I hear you on that. I totally agree. And I'm curious if any of you know, or perhaps you know, do the regulations for service animals, emotional health animals, do they vary by state, or is it a uniform, you know, federal code that they operate under?
It's uniform federal ADA regulation. States are not allowed, and if they try to say it, it might... Shiloh, will you sit up, please? Shiloh, up. Good girl. On my harness, I have her service dog, canine, Shiloh, handler, me, blah, 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 and underneath it, if I were to take it out, it's Velcroed in, and if my hands are having a bad day, I'd rather not. But if someone asked me to, I could slide it out, and it shows the federal ADA code where you can't. It's federal. It's not a state by state.
Okay, well that's good. That probably helps, you know, provide a frame of reference that's kind of throughout at least the United States. It's nice to know that that's handled from the top.
Britain is very, very different. They only got the hearing dogs recently, and I know the Queen's sister is doing a lot of work with that. Our local British affiliate can help with that, and I'll send you to her shortly. But I do want to say thank you for your work with the horses. I wanted to get in equine therapy so badly when I was still practicing, because it does so much good work and is just, it's a wonderful thing. And I have seen horses do wonderful things both as service animals, because I'm from Iowa, so you know, you get miniature horses for people out in the boonies and a farm kid, and it does help because, you know, farm kid who's used to hanging out with a John Deere and stuff, miniature horse is a lot more helpful than a little dog when they want to still hang out with the rest of the family. But, and I've seen kids with severe developmental delay and autism respond in equine therapy where nothing else works. And yeah, I've worked with PTSD, and all of my stuff with, I've got, and it's hard work. And if you're not ready to do any of the modalities that I have, even though some of them don't make you think about it right away, working with a horse is a lot easier. Horse is a lot less terrifying.
And horses, you know, we were talking at the beginning of the show about animals and their ability to sense our emotions. And I really believe that that's one of the reasons why horses do, as you mentioned, function very, very well when it comes to using them as part of some kind of psychotherapy. When you think about horses in terms of the animal themselves, these guys have survived off of body language. Everybody knows horses run in herds, and so they've got millions of years of evolution where they are hardwired to be emotional barometers, not just with other horses, but with people as well. In fact, I was reading a couple months ago that horses can actually distinguish between human facial expressions and be able to appropriately place a mood with that facial expression. And when you think about it in terms of, that's an entirely different species who's intelligent enough and emotionally intelligent enough to recognize the corresponding facial expressions and emotions in an animal of another species. It's incredible. So, again, it's not for everybody. It wouldn't work for everybody, but I don't think any kind of therapy does. And their ability to just instinctively know what's going on inside the mind or emotions of a patient when that patient may not even fully understand some of their own emotions. I know I certainly didn't for a long time. They're absolutely almost magical emotion creatures. I mean, they truly are. We have a school here in Lexington. You were mentioning children who have had a hard time for whatever reason. Here in Lexington, or just outside of Lexington rather, there is a school, and it is basically solely comprised of children that this is their last shot. They've run through the gamut of the traditional public school. They've either gotten suspended or expelled, or whatever reason, they're not fitting into the traditional educational model, and this is their last shot. Many of them have come from very traumatic backgrounds. Many of them have PTSD. When you think in terms of a child having PTSD in the midst of the already tumultuous times that is teenage years and the hormones, I mean, that's tough. You're dealing with all the crap that comes with being a teenager, and if you have something as profoundly life-changing such as having PTSD, that's tough. So these kids, I mean, this is their last opportunity, and 2 days a week, 2 to 3 days, I believe, they spend in lecture. And then the other couple of days in the week, or the other 2.5 days in the week, they actually go out to a farm where they work with horses. And what we're seeing in programs like this, especially with children that have come from traumatic backgrounds, many of them are nonverbal, many of them will not talk to therapists. What we're seeing is that these children are able to subconsciously project the things that are troubling them onto the horses. And it's this way that we're actually being able to break through to some of these people that, this is their last shot. This is it. After this, there's no place else for them. This is their last shot. And we're seeing a lot of success through these programs. And as a future professional, what I would like to see, and I'm sure all of you probably agree with your own respective animals, what I would like to see is larger insurance coverage. This should be covered. Talk therapy does not work for everybody. It's not productive for everybody, and I wish that this was something that was more widely available and affordable as well, because it can do good things in the right circumstances. Mark, do you have anything to add?
No, actually, I want to go ahead and let Lois speak a little bit about the UK and service animals, because I know nothing about that.
Oh, I don't know if you can hear me. Yeah, oh good. I was just going to say it's completely different in the UK for us. There's not really many service dogs. It's mainly just Labradors or Golden Retrievers for blind people and deaf people, but you rarely come across them. Our main sort of daytime TV, and recently they got their own service dog to help. Well, they were doing the training for it, so that was really good. It got a lot more notice around the UK, but there's not really anything about emotional support dogs at all. I guess they're just like our pets, really, but I think as well, and it's different in the UK, that we're just ridiculously crazy about dogs and animals anyway. So I think they're more common in every sort of household than over there. So people are just more accepting that dogs will be there for you should you need it. But you can't take them anywhere really. You can take them in pets at home, which I think is like PetSmart over there. But rarely any places you can take them in. So even with actual support dogs, a lot of places, restaurants, shops question them if they can go in. So it's quite nice to see in America that they don't necessarily ask that many questions about you personally, and they're a bit more forgiving of letting them in. But as far as I'm aware, over here we don't pay for service animals if they're needed. If anything, I think you actually get money towards caring for that dog. And I know myself, as with my business, I offer discounts for service animals. But obviously I wouldn't be able to do that for emotional pet ones, because I don't think I'd have a business if I was giving it out, because I think every dog knows to an extent. But I also agree that some people do put jackets on them, service animals, even though they're really not. They haven't had any training. Just because they've gave you a lick when you've passed out or something doesn't mean that they're there to do that next time or warn you of that. So it's completely different here, I think, to over there. So I don't know. Maybe I should move to America. I'll pass it back to you, Mark.
Thank you. One of the key distinction, I think, between pet and emotional support animal, at least here in the United States, is if, for example, you live in an apartment that forbids animals, and if your physician, your doctor, does decide that an animal would help you emotionally, there is paperwork you can sign and go through that will make it the emotional support dog lower than a service dog, that would then still allow you to get an animal in an apartment or home that it might not be allowed in. Those rules, though, are not as concrete as the service animals, and service animals are definitely a lot more lined out as far as the exact rules where that's concerned. But an emotional support dog makes it, or animal, because there are various types. You can have a rat, a bird, whatever, or cat, dog. It doesn't matter. That emotional support with that animal could benefit you as someone with chronic depression, anxiety, etc., and your doctor recognizes that. There's ways to accommodate, usually. Now, we're running close to the end of our show. Is there anything else anybody wants to talk about with their animal and how that helps them? Okay, it looks like we have said just about everything we do want to say. So I want to thank all of our panelists and all of our viewers for watching. Thank you very much.